Committee of the 15th of July. Just as we start, I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording will be subsequently be available for public listening. Number one, the Sederunt apologies, please.
Good morning. We have 8 members present. We have an apology from Councillor Peacock, Councillor Collins and Councillor McCutcheon may be along in a moment.
Thanks. Have we got any declarations of interest? Could we go on to items 3 and 4, the minute of the meeting 25th of March and the minute of the meeting of the 27th of May. Both of these have been agreed at full council and they're just for noting. Go on to item 5, DGFirst Revenue Monitoring Report 2013 to 2014 for the period ended the 31st of March 14. Could note that this is an outturn monitoring report for the financial year 2013 to 2014. The department has achieved an underspend of just under 113,000 and key issues to be discussed are at paragraphs 3.3 to 3.7. Overall, the agreed savings targets were met. See paragraphs 3.9 and appendix 2. And paragraph 310 refers to DGFirst Depot Rationalisation Programme started 10 years ago. The programme was to be partly funded by the sale of surplus properties, but unfortunately this has not been fully achieved and the report recommends the use of 62,000 of the underspend to meet the shortfall in capital receipts. The report also recommends that transferring the remaining 51,000 of the underspend to the department service reserves. Bill, have you got anything to add to that?
I've got nothing to add, Chair.
Could I open it to members? Ivor.
Just with regard to the transfer to the service reserves, is it for anything specific or is it just into the general reserves?
Look, it's into the general reserves at the moment.
Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just on the properties, obviously there's this money's been moved across to meet that target, as it were, but does that mean there's still 204k of property still to be disposed, and is that going to come as a future saving potentially?
It's rather more complex than that, I'm afraid. This and the next report, the transfers of the money to the depot rationalisation programme, if you like, clears DGFirst's corporate debt. There are properties still to be sold. Some of them have been unsold for a significant period of time. The capital receipts from those will go to the corporate capital pot.
Just how much are the reserves sitting at just now?
Our reserves, DGFirst's reserves, if you approve the recommendation, 51,000.
Ian.
Chairman, just if you give us a reminder, how much have we actually spent on DGFirst? Not DGFirst, on Carrigan Ridge, I think it is, through the depot rationalisation, and how much do you think was still to spend on it, out with what's already reflected within the report? And there was a decision made at Policy and Resources in which the potential look to purchase that. Just where are we on that? Away from this committee, fair enough, but I would imagine we would have an involvement in that.
I'm sorry, I don't have that figure. That's one of the pieces of paper I didn't bring with me in the file, but I can certainly advise members of the cost of the works to Cargan Towers. There are no works planned to Cargan Towers at the moment, and I'm afraid the purchase of Cargan Tower is a corporate issue, and I really don't know how that's going, but I will make inquiries and find out.
Stephen.
Thanks, Chair, for letting us in again there. Just on 3.3, the 100,000 that was used to offset an overspend on routine maintenance. It was just the use of the word routine, and I was just wondering how there could be a sort of £100,000 over routine sort of spend required? Just a wee bit more detail on that, thanks.
It is a technical description rather than a dictionary definition, and it mainly refers to additional patching work that needed to be carried out.
Archie.
I'm just looking at 3.4, Chair, and the additional £126,000 spent to purchase the new bins and route map in respect to introduction of zero waste legislation. How is that, I mean, it's not to do with this, but I'm just looking at how that's actually going now, because there was a delay in actually rolling out the zero waste side of things.
You should have received a briefing from Planning and Environment Services. The go-live date for Wigton food collections is the 25th of August, and for the dry recyclates is the 15th of September. I will confirm that to you.
Ian.
So I suppose it's just for more detail on 3.6 and 3.7. I think it's something could possibly be criticised on when you look at them, things we will look to spend money on, I suppose. So we've just got a wee bit more detail other than what's contained within the report, please. 3.6 and 3.7.
Remembering that both these items are from last financial year, there were staff vacancies and a much greater tightening up of controllable expenditure in the last few months for grounds maintenance. And we have managed to, because there was an additional grant of £100,000 for burial grounds repairs from the corporate centre set aside in the budget setting in February, we didn't spend as much as we had anticipated on burials for the burial service, so there was an underspend.
Colin.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not actually on this, but I just wondered while we're on the subject, have we any idea what extra it's costing to go back and recut grass that was meant to be left fallow? Or is it too early to know that?
I would think it would be too early. This is last year's budget, Colin. So, as I say, till we get the figures in, I think it'll be a wee bit early, premature to. Ivor.
Chair, it's with 3.11. There's a reference there to the cost of waste collection, especially in relation to commercial collections where income has continued to decline. If we go to the ABV2 items in advance, it says that that actually returns as a profit. Now, is it a case of the profit is reducing, therefore that's why it's got to be a pressure in future years?
Exactly. We estimate in previous years that the commercial collection has returned a surplus of some £150,000, which helps us pay for our domestic collection. Because of the reduction in number of commercial clients, we're not making as much income and therefore less profit. So that's why it's a budget pressure.
Does that mean that we're not allocating sufficient budget towards the domestic, whereby we should actually be covering our costs, which quite clearly, I think it's been the last couple of years, if not longer, have been more than what we've been getting in revenue support?
It is an issue for us. The budget is predicated on a certain level of income, and we're not seeing that. In the coming budget, we have reduced the income estimate. It's still a concern, though, because as the zero waste commercial collections roll out, and because of some fairly intense competition, we are struggling to keep the level of clients.
Stephen, before we go to recommendations again.
Thank you again, Chair. It was just a comment really, just to recognise the success of the school meals programme. Clearly that's contributed a lot towards the surplus. Just in 3.5, and the uptake's obviously been encouraging as well, and long may that continue. Thank you.
Got any more questions before we get to recommendations? go to the recommendations. Member are asked to note that 2.1 DGFirst achieved an underspend by £112,912 against the 2013-14 agreed budget. Noted. 2.2, the agreed savings applied to the 2013-2014 DGFirst budget were fully delivered, and 2.3, 62,000 of the underspend has been used to meet the outstanding depot sales shortfall in relation to the depot rationalisation programme within DGFirst, in addition to the 143,000 reflected within the trading operations outturn, with the residual 51,000 transferred to DGFirst service reserves. We'll go on to item 6, the Trading Operations Monitoring Report for 2013-14 for the period ended 31st of March 14. As with the last report, you should note this is an outturn monitoring position reported for DGFirst trading operations for the financial year 2013-14. It is an excellent to report that the trading operations have returned a surplus of nearly £143,000, more than 2.5 times last year's outturn. The key issues are discussed as paragraphs 3.3 to 3.8. Notably, building services has had a good trading year and has returned a significant surplus. As with the last report, paragraph 3.9 recommends a transfer of trading surplus to cover the remaining shortfall in the depot rationalisation programme. Have you got anything to add to that, Director?
No, thanks. I'll take any questions, though.
Ivor?
A couple of questions. With regard to 3.3, do I take it from that our internal contracts lost money because we made a surplus of 15,000, but the external contracts generated 17,800, so are the council no paying us enough? And within regard to 3.5, I note that although the expenditure was up, we didn't achieve, was it the return on the, as high a return, it was down 3.25%. Is that because we've had to sharpen our pencil?
The internal recharges are balanced at the end of the year, so the budget is adjusted accordingly. So we are paying ourselves the right amount. On the roads trading account, the model that was used for the calculation of cost recovery, and particularly of the on costs, was getting a bit dated, and that's why we've seen a reduction. We are introducing a new costing system that's currently being matched at the moment, so we should see a much better return this financial year.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Just on the vehicle maintenance trading at a loss, and I was just wondering if you could maybe explain why that should be.
Thank you, Chair. There was an overall reduction of business, which we were quite concerned about. The loss of some 13% of business with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service removing their business has been to some extent ameliorated by the fact that they've given us most of the business back. But also the real reason is that our costs were higher than our charges were set for, so that some of, if you like, the spare parts were more expensive than we had anticipated. That sort of thing is kept under review, and the same cost model that is in use or is being brought into use in roads is also being developed for vehicle maintenance to ensure that we charge the right amount.
Back in steam.
Yeah, so to take from that then that that's closely monitored and being reviewed to ensure that we don't trade at a loss in future. Thank you.
That's correct.
Anyone else? Before we recommend Ian?
Just in regards to our trading activity, what is the percentage of turnover compared to the amount of surplus that we actually return, or profit, whatever you want to call it? I'd like to get an idea what the turnover is compared to what the return is on that turnover.
I'm afraid I'd have to turn to the appendix and whip out my calculator to work that out, but if you're willing to wait, I'll do that at the end and let you know.
Either that, it comes with that other information same as the first one. Yep.
No problem. Anybody else? Stephen, again, before we go to recommendations.
I should maybe put all these together in one question. It's just on the Appendix 1, and it's actually more to do with, I suppose, easy reading of the table. But the subjective analysis on the final column, it's under overspend expenditure or under over recovery income, and then there's like everything's either decreased activity, and I can you can work out what it is, but it's actually not very clear. Given that some of them are surpluses, some of them are overspends, and some of them are increased activity, decreased activity, and not overspends, underspends, etc. So it was just maybe asking in future for a bit more clarity on that. Thanks.
I will ensure that it happens. Thank you.
The recommendations, if there are no more questions. 2.1 members are asked to note that the trading operation achieved surplus of £142,827 in 2013-14, and 2.2, the surplus has been used to meet the remaining element of the outstanding depot sales shortfall in relation to the depot rationalisation programme within DGFirst. Right. Thanks. Item 7. It's the DGFirst budget 2013-2014. The report provides members with details of the DGFirst budget 2014 to 15 and associated activity-based budget information. On May the 30th, 2013, full council agreed the budget development process for the period 2014-15 to 2016-17. One of the key early elements of the process is the review and agreement by this committee of DGFirst budgets for 2014-15. The director will take us through the highlights of the DGFirst section of the ABB book, which forms the appendix to the report. Members are being given the opportunity to support their group's deliberations on budget development, and the director will attempt to answer any questions you may have and will provide any clarification required on detailed questions to members directly. Now, Bill.
Thank you, Chair. As normal, I will take you through the highlights of what is a fairly thick document and await with interest your questions. Or I would if the technology would help. This gives you an indicative picture of the controllable budgets by service across the department. The two big ones are obviously neighbourhood services and road services, and the smallest being community services, community safety at just under £1 million. Breaking the budget estimates down into the subjective analysis, you'll see that nearly half the budget is spent on staff, roughly a third on supplies and services, and the remainder being property costs, transport and plant and administration. Thank you. Brief look at where our income comes from. Fees and charges is the majority. Now, that includes the school meal charges, for example. Other income is income from other departments within the council, and other grants are things such as area committee grants. Next one, please. Breakdown based on the year that we've just seen, where the money comes from. A third from council revenue, almost a half from the capital programme, and about 20% of our income comes from external sources. Really, this slide shows the recent history of the DGFirst budget, showing after a small increase in 2011-12, which is when community safety was transferred to DGFirst, the significant contribution that the department has made to the council's overall savings in 2012-13 and 13-14. I'm happy to take any questions on the detail within the ABB if members have them. Thank you.
Members. Archie.
Well, I'm just looking at the income potential for, you know, DGFirst, especially on roads and things like that, with the new change in contracts for, you know, roads in 75, 74, that type of thing. What potential there is there for more income from, is it Transfer Scotland?
We're currently working almost at full capacity and actually sometimes a little bit over. We're very fortunate that Scotland Transerve are very keen to work in partnership and extend our working. So we're doing a large amount of work on the trunk road network in the southwest unit, very little in the southeast unit, the A7, but we're doing a significant amount of surfacing and routine repair work on the network.
Archie.
Just, and potential for other utilities, is there any other potential there for utilities?
We're currently talking to British Telecom Openreach about undertaking their reinstatement work in the same way that we're doing with Scottish Water.
Ian.
Thanks, Chairman. I think one big fundamental question for myself on when I look at this stuff here and with the presentation that you've given us as well is in regards to, if you strip away the commissions, strip all that out of the budget, take all that away, where do we find our savings from? Where would you see direction? So you strip them away, because obviously commissioners, the commissioning services take out, they look at their budgets and they take that away. So in real terms, that'll be dictated to us by social work, education and plan environment services. So where do you see the savings coming from, real potential, when DGFirst, if you strip out the commission services?
You're quite right. When we get to the actual budget, which is effectively running the department, it's a heck of a lot smaller than the 32 plus million that we've got at the moment. We can find savings, and we're finding those from rationalising the way that we provide support services, and there's a significant saving coming from improving the way that we work. Other than that, the main savings will either come from increased trading or from a reduction in commissions. There really is no other place to go.
Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. I've got sort of 3 questions, but I'll put them all in a winner. They're not connected. One is to do with...
Take them one at a time, Stephen. We'll let you back in. We'll let you back in.
The first one, I noticed on page 46, it gives this is parks, open spaces and burial services, and it helpfully gives a cost per hectare of open space maintenance. And I'm just wondering, is this maybe a basis for taking forward where perhaps area committees ask how much it costs to maintain an area that they might wish to fund out of their area county budgets, because it gives it there 2013-14 5,083 per hectare. The second question is to do with CCTV maintenance. Now that sort of comes under road service, but I'm aware that Community Customer Service also have a project to sort of upgrade CCTV throughout the region. So I just wonder, is there any clarity on which part of the budget comes from roads and which comes from CCS? And the third one is, it's actually to do with unstaffed public conveyances, and I noticed that there's £157,000 worth of salaries for that, and I was just wondering if you could explain, just for a bit of humour there, just what that means. Thank you.
I'll take those in reverse order, otherwise I'll not remember them. The unstaffed public conveniences are those without a permanent staff. They're cleaned and maintained by mobile crews. CCTV maintenance, when functions were taken on by the new unitary authority, the roads and infrastructure budget got landed effectively with all the bits that didn't fit neatly somewhere else. So safety equipment along the River Nith, war memorials, clocks and CCTV all ended up in the roads budget. It's not necessarily the best place for it. CCTV maintenance, routine maintenance, is actually managed by community safety. The upgrade by CCS is capital expenditure on new equipment. Public open space burial service, the cost per hectare, it's a bit of a blunt instrument if area committees are using it as a tool, because you can imagine that perhaps the cost of maintaining a hectare in Dromore is slightly different to maintaining a hectare of the same ground in Georgetown and Dumfries. It's literally the cost divided by the complete area that we maintain, but there will be differences in cost for each piece of ground. And my senior manager neighbourhood services is currently working on better information for that purpose.
Back in, Stephen. Lovely to have money in an area committee to spend.
Thank you, Chair. So it's just that it's listed there as a cost per hectare rather than an hourly rate or a sort of staff cost. So it was just really to clear up that discrepancy, and obviously that's a piece of work that you're carrying out. Just on the CCTV, although it's a capital project by CCS effectively, does that have an ongoing implicit impact on the future maintenance? And does that then, how does that arrive in DGFirst's budget for that revenue cost?
I suppose the honest answer is that's a matter of discussion at the moment. The capital investment in the new systems should reduce the maintenance costs. The existing and particularly analogue systems in the smaller settlements are actually becoming quite expensive to maintain, so the upgrade to newer systems will reduce the overall maintenance cost, but any extension to the systems will need additional maintenance funding.
Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. Just when it comes to the different services that we're delivering within the activity-based budget, pick up one, for instance, say the grounds maintenance. Where is there within the appendix where we could possibly compare that to an external contractor? I'd like to get an idea if we can see the benefits or disbenefits to that. That's obviously one of the things we're looking at. Are we best to provide that as an in-house service or an external service? And how would that apply? Is there anywhere else within the activity-based budget where we could apply that, not just grounds maintenance, across the board? Is there room for receiving the same public service but for less money through a private contractor?
There is some work being done on comparative costs between in-house and external providers as part of the overall budget development process for next year. We don't have that information for grounds maintenance and the burial service at the moment, because roughly 2/3 of our roads work is actually done by external contractors. We have a better idea in the road service. That doesn't appear in the ABB, but we can certainly bring another report similar to the one from last year on the relative costs of external contractors.
Ivor?
It's from top of page 28 within the table. We have neighbourhood waste collection, and last year's outturn was 3.5 million, yet at no time does the forward budget estimates actually come up to that. And I would take it that we're still getting extra houses every year built, so the cost will be going up slightly. What are we doing to actually make sure that we come in within target in those areas?
We manage the controllable costs very closely. We attempt to reduce the amount of overtime that's being worked. Yes, as new houses are added to the general housing stock, that puts a pressure on the service. It's one of the reasons why we undertook a complete route review a couple of years ago that produced efficiencies, because the collection routes had grown organically, with odd houses being added to routes on an almost ad hoc basis. Fortunately, the lack of housing has helped us future-proof to a certain extent, though as the financial climate gets better and more houses are built, then we will probably have to review the routes again.
Stephen?
Thanks again. It was just actually on page 28 again, just on the transfer of janitors' budgets totaling 1.463 million. Looking at facilities management table, you can see the sort of significant change between 2013-14 from 5.577 million to 4.243 million. And I was just wondering, would there be a corresponding impact on staff costs with that? Because as you project forwards, it seems to rise up in terms of staff costs back to what the 2013-14 levels were, but the facilities maintenance cost stays largely at that sort of reduced level from 2014 onwards. So just a little bit more detail on that, thanks.
I don't have an answer for that, unless Gillian has.
The staff costs element within there'll be a lot of kind of one-off areas that are included within the outturn area in relation to accounting adjustments that are carried out as part of the year end in relation to fictional holidays that are due and stuff like that. If somebody hasn't taken the pro rata holiday allocation, the budgets going forward include the assumptions that we've made corporately at the moment, so a 1% pay award for this current financial year, and then 1.5% going forward. The figures for the facilities management will include, they are going up each year, but they'll include projections and the increases in the income levels and stuff like that as well. So everything will sort of even out across, but there'll be other changes within there as well as just staff costs.
Just to come back on that, just in terms of the janitor's budget, what component of that would be staffing costs, and what would be like materials and administration, etc.?
I think the vast majority is, I haven't been involved in the transfer of the janitor's budget across to education, but the vast majority will be staffing costs. They will have small supplies and services aspects in relation to ongoing purchases within the schools and that, but that does tend to be at the minimum level.
Kate, have you got anything to add to that? Ivor?
Just on the care and support services, do you see any issues there with regard to the health and social integration? Will there be any movement in the budget that might be either positive or negative for us?
I think Kate is probably the one, as she is involved in this, to give you the answer to that.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say at the moment that finance officers from NHS and Council are working together to map out the budget and the pooled budget for the future for April 2015, because that all has to be in place by then. So it will be, I'm assured, an open and transfer of budgets and spend from Council and NHS going forward. So really, Councillor Hesler, that's all I can say on that one at the moment. There could be movement. We are, as you know, going through the review again, based on working with private voluntary sector. I'm now working with social work colleagues, etc., looking at how we take that forward, because I think we've agreed the strategy, but we need to now put in place the how are we going to achieve that. And that's looking at the reablement service, how we can expand that, how we can put in prevention and early intervention going forward.
Got any more questions? Ian?
I just think that was an interesting point that was brought up there, especially with the Health and Social Care Integration Board, as it becomes fixed and permanent. You just wonder, is there even an option that they might say, listen, we didn't actually want to use DGFirst, we want to use another service? So it's something, is that the kind of things we should be looking at, taking account of, or should we just think, no, that's very unlikely to happen? And going back to the previous question, waste collection, just in regards to the predictions of the spend, it goes up incrementally annually. It's a very small percentage uplift. Is that an assumption against what we're actually, our new waste collection system, I take it? Because we kind of touched on earlier, I would imagine if you get 2 or 3 houses added to a route, or even half a dozen houses added to a route over a year, that can be just absorbed into part of the kind of extra 5 minutes over the half a dozen houses as part of that day. But the whole change of method of work and practice, is that the figures we're actually looking at? That would be the thing that I'd be more concerned about if it wasn't the same.
In relation to the new changes with the zero waste strategy, there was the paper up to PHE committee in 2012 regarding the overall strategy. The costs associated with that haven't yet transferred between PHE and DGFirst. So as part of that overall paper, there was details of the overall cost that would be involved and what the increase would be impacting on DGFirst, which would be funded from money that's already sitting within PHE. That transfer will take place once the overall the start of the programme has commenced, and that will happen during the year, and that will increase going forward. So the budgets don't yet reflect that until we've actually implemented it.
Remember that, I think it was Zero Waste Scotland have contributed X amount for maybe 2 or 3 years, I think it is. Yep, I understand. That's what I was kind of wondering, does it reflect that level of extra pressure? But what you're saying, I think, Julian, is it doesn't actually reflect at this point in time, but I would imagine as they roll out and we do start to collect it in a different manner, starting for the west, working to east, that it will, so for next year, we'll start to see that reflected within so it should be a 200 or 300, maybe £400,000, I think it's near £400,000 actually extra, wasn't it?
I think the overall funding that was included within PHE from the Scottish Government was the 703,000 from the Strategic Waste Fund, and I think there was an element there that there was additional cost going forward. So I think it's probably between £700,000 to £800,000 or something like that should transfer over to DGFirst for the new kind of collection. But that will be confirmed, once we've actually implemented it and assessed the costs.
No more questions? Can we just go to the recommendations? I notice we should have done them at the start, but we've received the presentation on the activity-based budget information and associated budget estimates from DGFirst and from the Director, and that we've reviewed, and can we agree the DGFirst budget 2014-15 as detailed in the appendix to this report? Thanks. Go on to item 7. It's a 8. Item 8. It's a refresh business plan for from 2012 to 2015 DGFirst. Members will recall that the end of the year business plan assessment was presented to this committee in May this year and was well debated. The members' seminar for the refresh of the business plan held on the 24th April was very poorly attended. I think it was just me and Stephen that were actually there. Appendix 1 contains a summary of changes, and Appendix 2 contains the second refreshed business plan for 2012 to 2015. The members are asked to approve this business plan as detailed within the papers. Have you got anything to add to that?
I have nothing to add, but we'll take any questions that members may have on the plan.
Members? Archie?
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at page 102 of 142 of the appendix, and one is we have discussed on a few occasions the ICT development and integration of using mobile and smart technology as a potential of having some good savings in that particular area. Can you tell us how that's moving on?
The mobile working for this current year is mainly focused on the road service, and it's part of a wider corporate effort to improve the way that faults are handled. We believe that will be a more efficient and effective system, but may not result in cashable savings. Some of the aspects of the proposals were discussed at the depot visits that a number of members came to see.
Stephen.
Thank you. I've got a few questions. I'll try and get the ones that I've got in a big lump. Just on the page 119 EMES action plan, second paragraph down, it just alludes to an action plan being presented to to a DGFirst Management Committee for approval. I was just wondering where that was at and when we could expect to see that. Similarly, just the previous page on Customer First, I'm aware that, again, another committee, CCS, they're encouraging people to take customer service professional qualifications. I was just wondering if there's any sort of overlap or similarity where customer service training could be, nationalised or sort of taken advantage of in some way to sort of boost the uptake of that across the services. Thank you.
James, taking it.
The EMAS action plan will be coming to the September meeting of this committee. Customer First and the customer service training is delivered on a corporate basis across the council. I don't know how many of our staff, but James could advise on that.
Yeah, absolutely correct. It's through our colleagues in CCS that we have sent a number of staff, particularly support services staff, who are face to face, over the phone, such like with communities and customers. So we have certain individuals trained at each of the depots from Stranraer right through to Lockerbie.
Stephen, back in.
I am just sort of being cheeky because I've got another couple of questions. On page 112, it's to do with the property maintenance, preventative or reactive maintenance being under development. I was just wondering where that was at and when we could likely see something in a bit more detail in the business plan.
I have to say that's a work in progress with Property and Architectural Services, and they're under a certain amount of pressure at the moment, so it's going slower than we had hoped.
Any other members' questions? For none, can we go to the record? That the members are asked to approve the refreshed sections of the business plan for DGFirst set out in Appendixes 1 and 2. Say, I haven't got no further business. Thank you for attending this short meeting. Thank you.